Yeah, I see it.
Great. Okay, then I'll start. So good morning and welcome everybody to our masterclass on crop rotations from my side. My name is Gilles Altmann. I'm an agricultural advisor and researcher at the Institute for Organic Agriculture Luxembourg, IBLA, where we work together with organic but also with conventional farms. So today I will give you a short introduction to the topic of crop rotations and their beneficial effects. Well, let's have a start with an example for a typical crop rotation which especially fits for organic farms, but is beneficial for all types of farms. So this rotation starts with 2 to maximum 4 years of temporary grassland, depending on the total number of following crops in the rotation, and is consisting of grass, clover, or alfalfa mixtures. The following crops go from cereals with high demand of nitrogen to those with low demand. Between the crops, catch crops like mustard or phacelia ensure a conservation of nutrients and protect the soil by covering it. And integrated legumes in the beginning and in the middle of the rotation enable another nitrogen input for the supply of the cereals at the end. By creating large and diverse crop rotations, of course, we try to achieve different goals and beneficial effects in which I will give a short introduction now. So the most important goal is to preserve and increase soil fertility, of course, in the long term. And this is especially achieved by the integration of grass cover or the alfalfa mixtures for humus production and other legumes, which supply the soil with nitrogen. Then crop rotations can support an increase in biodiversity. As you can see, we have butterflies, bees, and other pollinators. We have rainworms, and we have soil microorganisms, and also beetles. Well, another point is that a plant rotation of crops which support each other and fit each other ensure a sustainable yield security, or can possibly ensure it. Another point is that weeds, diseases, and pests can be regulated in a natural way. And another opportunity with diverse crop rotations is to close nutrient cycles. Finally, we can say that temporary grassland with clover or alfalfa mixtures for mowing and grazing, as well as integrated cereals and legumes, can provide, of course, feed for the cattle, which can be used in the farm. Well, if we tell about crop rotations and their beneficial effects, there are some rules that have to be followed when planning and implementing crop rotations. So the first point, of course, is that sowing and harvest days have to fit together when we choose crops. The second point is that winter and summer annuals should be alternated regularly, and I will go into detail later on. Then recommended breaks for the cultivation of one crop on the same field should be followed, of course. Then the integration of catch crops and under sowings is recommended, as I told already before. You should look for a balanced supply of crops with nutrients, which is a crucial point for other points like wheat, pressure and plant health, and I'll go into this also a little bit. Then, of course, you have to look at humus consumers and humus multipliers, which should be in balance for an optimal humus level. You should look for enough legumes to integrate in your crop rotations for the natural supply with nitrogen. And then finally, the crops and species you choose for the crop rotation should be adapted to the location of your farm, because in every country, in every region, there are other other soils, other weather, and so you have to look at this before planning your crop rotation. So then let's go into weeds control and disease and pest regulation. As told before, an important advantage of diverse crop rotation is an increased preventive regulation of these weeds, plant diseases, and pests, which enables then a reduction, or potentially enables a reduction in the use of and the need of pesticides. So for weeds, we have to say that weeds are able to adapt to the cultivation rhythm of crops, and this is due to their life cycle. And if you have monocropping, this leads to a selection of those weeds that are best adapted to the respective culture. And this in return, of course, can lead to a rapid and high increase in weed population. So I show you this table with typical summer and winter annuals, annuals with no link to the season, and perennial weeds with the crops they typically grow in. So on the left side, you have the summer annuals like wild mustard or barnyard grass, and they typically grow in maize or beets or other root crops. And you have the winter annuals like bentgrass or coquelicot, and those grow typically in winter cereals. Then you have those weeds like chickweed and shepherd's purse, which typically grow the whole year and in all kinds of crops. And then you have also perennials like thistle or couch grass, and they are perennial and can grow in all kinds of crops or grassland. And what I want to tell you with this graph or table is that the diverse crop rotation with the change of winter and summer crops affects that optimal growth conditions for specific weeds are broken by suboptimal growth conditions. And this is especially true for winter and summer annuals, where a one-sided weed population can prevent it by changing regularly winter and summer crops. So another point for weed control is that we can integrate those temporary grasslands with grass, clover, or alfalfa mixtures, and this in an optimal way for 3 to 4 years. And this has a positive effect because we have a regular mowing or grazing, and a high concurrence for growth factors like light, water, and nutrients. And this is a fact that enables to starve weeds and to reduce their pressure. And here, best effects can be seen for annual weeds. And another positive effect for weed control can be the balanced nutrient availability in the soil due to a balanced demand for nutrients of the different crops. Then, when we tell about disease and pest control, we can have a natural regulation by using a diverse crop rotation. And in fact, this is due to the fact that when we have a diverse crop rotation, we ensure a temporary suspension of the cultivation of the crop. And this temporarily deprives the pest or disease of its host plant. And we can say that this is especially effective for highly specialized soil-borne pests with reduced mobility and a 1-year life cycle. So I'll show you another table which gives some examples for pests that can be promoted by short cultivation breaks or short crop rotations in general. So, for example, we have the potato, where bacteria can lead to the potato scab. In winter wheat, you have fungus that can be cause high pressure and cause eye spot of wheat or barley or rye. So another crop is oats, where nematodes can cause plant diseases, and in rape or cabbage you have fungus that can cause clubroot, for example. So just to show you some examples of typical pests and diseases that can be promoted by a short cultivation break between the crops. So then I go into soil quality, which is linked to crop rotations. Of course, the basis for agricultural production is soil quality. And when we tell about soil quality, we have first a static part, and this is naturally given and can't be influenced by the farmer. But on the other hand, you also have a dynamic part, and this in turn can be improved by the farmer, and this through selection of the cultivated crops, the crop rotation, and the linked humus management. Therefore, in diverse crop rotations, we have a support of the preservation and the increase of soil fertility. And if you tell about soil fertility and good soil structure, we imagine a soil like shown here in the picture. And a good soil structure shows a crumb structure with an equal distribution of soil pores, and this for a good infiltration of precipitation, like shown in the picture in the middle, and a regular gas exchange of CO2 and O2, like shown on the right picture. So if we have this good and optimal soil conditions, on one hand, we can ensure a good water infiltration, and this of course reduces erosion and enables a long-lasting water storage in the soil. So we do something good for water quality and drinking water quality. And if we tell about gas exchange, a very positive effect is that we promote an active soil life, because if we have regular input of O2, then of course soil life can be very active. So if you want to have this good soil structure, when looking for a stable soil structure, first, simple soil aggregates have to be formed. And this is shown on the left side picture. And this is ensured by an association of soil particles like sand and clay. And this is due to clay humus complexes. And you see this on the right picture. So you have this bondage between clay and the humus ensured by natrium. Because we have the need for this humus, we have to look for an increase of the humus levels. And for this, in the soil, we have to look that in our crop rotations, we have a minimum optimally of 20 to 30% of clover alfalfa grass mixtures. We have to reduce the percentage of grown cereals to a maximum of 60% about. And one single crop never should take more than 20% of the surface. Then it is very important to alternate leaf and stalk crops, humus consuming and humus forming crops, as well as winter and summer crops. And then, of course, as told before, intercropping has another additional positive effect on the humus conservation and the build up of humus. Then, for the formation of solid soil structure, these first formed simple soil particles have to be glued together, and this by the excretions of microorganisms and mycorrhiza fungus, and this in order to form complex soil particles. And this is shown here in the picture on the right side, where we can see that there are a lot of bacteria and the mycorrhiza, and they form these yellow bacterial excretions here shown, and this, as told, ensures then a stable soil structure. Well, this stable soil structure with a lot of bacteria and other microorganisms, the clay and organic substances, enables then the conservation of nutrients, and this of course reduces leaching of nutrients, and by ensuring this nutrient storage in the soil, plants can take the nutrients when they need, so you have always a good supply of nutrients and less losses into groundwater. Well, another important point is that diverse crop rotations with the growth of various root types at different soil layers enables an increased quantity, diversity, and activity of soil life. So, as you can see on the left picture shown on the left side, monoculture of weeds causes a reduced growth of roots, so they don't grow in a large soil volume anymore, and of course this reduces the amount and diversity of soil life, whereas on the right side, in a good chosen crop rotation, you can see that roots grow in a higher soil volume, and you have different colors for different types of soil organisms, so diversity increases and also the number of the microorganisms increases. This then leads to an equal pore distribution, which is ensured thanks to diverse root growth, and this then provides air and water for the growth of the microorganisms, and this again in return enables the buildup and conservation of soil, of a stable soil structure. Well, the diverse soil life then in return is enabled by the root growth, and as you can see in this picture, the root and the different root types supply soil life with various assimilates from photosynthesis, and they are excreted into the soil via rhizodeposition, and this leads to the nutrition and then into an increase in diversity and quantity of soil life. In return, microorganisms in the soil then solve nutrients fixed in the soil and can make them plant available. So the nutrition of the plant becomes better. Another positive effect is that a good soil structure and the diverse soil life enables an efficient nutrient use, as already told before. So a problem is that roots and root hairs alone are able to reach a small soil volume around the roots itself. So nutrients stored in a soil volume which is far away is problematic. And now the diverse soil life comes into place. So we have these mycorrhiza formed by fungus in the soil, and they engage the symbiosis with the plant and are able to reach the soil volume in a distance which roots and root hairs alone would never reach. And this increases the supply of the plant with water and nutrients. Well, of course, then you have a better use of nutrients saved in the soil, and this then can reduce the need for synthetic fertilizers, and this balanced nutrient availability on demand of the plant then can increase plant health and reduces the need for pesticides. Well, finally, another point I want to go in when we tell about nutrient leaching and water protection is that, of course, a diverse crop rotation enables or can positively enable an intensive rooting of different soil layers, and thus can lead to an efficient use of nutrients, which prevents then from leaching. So as shown here in the picture on the left side, if you have like a monocropping, roots always grow on one same soil layer, and nutrients here shown by these blue spots in more deep soil layers can't be used. And on the right side, shown different root types of different crops, which can use a diverse soil volume and can take off nutrients from different soil layers. So in the whole, you have a better use of nutrients. Well, that was my presentation, where I wanted to show you some aspects of positive effects of crop rotations. And so I invite you to ask questions or give comments on this, and then we can go on in the further discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Gilles. I think we can start already with one question from Wico, indicating he would be interested to know also the place of the high value crops, potatoes, onions, sugar beets, and vegetables, because you usually combine it, I think, with more with wheat and grains. Do you have examples from, or is that also indicated? Maybe Wico, you can specify the question.
Yeah.
No, I think the example is especially for the grassland, and maybe steepy and organic is very good. And maybe later on in this masterclass, it's good also to talk about the arable farms, the arable crops, about the kind of rest crops, and on the other hand, because of finance, how do you work with the high value crops, and how does it work? I'll wait for, I think, the other speakers.
Okay.
But if you have command, it's already, of course, okay already.
Yeah, that's true that, I wanted to give an overall overview, and it's true that we can go further into detail for specific crops, and I think this would be a very important point. So maybe later on we have more details on this, or as you told, then we can take this for following masterclasses. So now it's difficult for me to give more specific examples or details on this, but we can take this for further presentations.
Yeah. On the other hand, I think we have expertise in the meeting. I see some people. Maybe afterwards in discussion we can talk about this for the arable situation too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. There's one side question. If the presentation is available for the education, that's something I will discuss after the meeting, and we will come back to you, Mark, on that. Stefan asked, Mark asked also if there is the influence of the treatment of the soil on the quality of the soil. Maybe, Mark, would you like to clarify your question, or do you want me to? It's always nice to hear.
One moment, yeah. De vraag is eigenlijk of dat de grondbewerking van invloed is op de kwaliteit van de bodem. Je hebt nu de positieve effecten van teeltrotatie. Is er bijvoorbeeld een grondbewerking die de bij wijze van spreken totaal zo doorkruisen? En dat is de kritiek op het ploegen.
Yeah. So the question is that so the way you treat the soil, for example, with plowing, is there? He asks, is there like one of those treatments of plowing or of other ways how you interact the soil that kind of destroys the soil life you just have built up?
Yeah, that's a very interesting and also very difficult point, where there were always interesting discussions with different farm types. So, of course, you can say that a reduction in the intensity of soil tillage should have a positive impact on diversity and quantity of soil organisms. But I'm also convinced that you need some amount of soil tillage, for the reduction of problematic weeds and for the supply of soil life with O2, and then this this gas exchange, and you have to ensure that a deep soil layer can be used by plants, and maybe if you reduce tillage to one single soil layer, then you have compactions in the soil which can't be broken by plants, maybe by crops, and so you have to break them up, and maybe we can support this with a deeper tillage of the soil. But I think in combination with crop rotation, the growth of these grass clover mixtures, and integration of cover crops, you could find a good compromise between too much and not enough tillage.
Okay, so you say that there's ideally for the soil life you do as little, but for the farming you have to do a little bit. So it's looking for a balance.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Maybe a final question before we first continue to the next presentation, also from Stefan, how to reduce chickweed.
For Gilles, chickweed is Vogelmiere in German, if you need the translation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, of course, I think the good thing is that this is one of the less problematic weeds, because it has also a lot of positive effects on the soil. So you have some soil cover, you have protective effects for erosion, for the water regulation in the soil. And well, of course, if you go into these rules of diverse crop rotation and their beneficial effects, then you have a natural regulation. Then normally you never have an overpopulation, or you have a concurrence with which is not too high. And so there should be a natural regulation, and then regulation can also be made by soil tillage, so good preparing of sowing. So normally this should not cause these big problems for me.
Is that an answer to you, Stefan? Would you say that regulation is also a way of reducing it? Of wil je dat ik het nog even vertaal? Kan ook. Stefan?
I'm sorry, my English typing is not that fast.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we try with crop rotation, but we have the problem that in the system of reduced tillage, that the soil, the topsoil layer gets better and better. It's more fertile and more fertile, and if you have crop rotation is not always possible due to the crops you can sell. So then if you have a lot of cash crops, some are vegetables to say, then you can have serious troubles with chickweed. And so I was wondering if you have maybe some other solution, but the ones you told, we are trying to apply them.
Okay.
But you gave a very important point. So I think that chickweed is grows very good with a high nitrogen supply. So of course, if you go into this reduced tillage systems, you have a high increase in the above soil layers, and you have less nitrogen in the deeper soil layers. So we have optimal conditions for these weeds, which are very good growing in high nitrogen supply. So maybe, a deeper soil tillage could be a solution again. or an integration of some more deep soil tillage in the rotation. So, for example, not plowing every year, but plowing once in the rotation or something like this. Yeah, this could be a point. Yeah.
Okay, another point for discussion. Interesting.
Exactly.
I suggest we go to Aline. I have an echo, but
yes. Hello, everyone.
Maybe you can stop presenting your screen, Gilles.
Exactly. Yes, I stopped normally.
Okay, yeah, now it stopped. Sorry, it takes some time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, you. We will hear you in the discussion again.
Yeah, thank you too.
Okay, so I think you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm Aline Vandewalle. I'm project officer in agronomy in the French Chambre of Agriculture in Pays de la Loire, northwest of France, and I will present you a method for the design of crop rotation and how, in fact, how we can use the principle that Gilles presented just before. Usually for the design of cropping system, we use the step-by-step design, which is a progressive improvement of existing system with different steps, even if some of them are implicit. We have a diagnosis, an action plan, first realization often on small areas, one field, for example, and then assessment, and it's a progress loop. This reflection is conducted by farmers on their own and also between farmers and advisors. But you can also introduce a second method for designing cropping system, which is a co-design workshop. This method is the main characteristic to open possibilities without pathway dependency, and to gather heterogeneous knowledge from farmers and also sometimes from scientists, and to involve different stakeholders in the same room, farmers, advisors, researchers. And the facilitation method is led to explore new solutions. These two methods are complementary, and the second one can be used with groups of farmers or in research projects mainly. I will focus on this second method and propose you the method and then an example. This how works this workshop. The main point is that the co-design is a challenge of the collective intelligence. There are different steps. First of all, the diagnosis, which is a very important step. Diagnosis of the strengths and weakness of the current situations, of the current rotation, and then define the definition of goals for the new system, for the new rotation, with a collective validation. Then the second step is the main phase of design thinking, with the identification of agronomic levels that we can use to reach the objectives, and how we can combine this level to build a coherent set of practices. This step is often in small groups, and then we have a presentation, a sharing phase of the discussion to conclude and obtain one or two different new cropping system. The last step is the assessment, which could be on-the-spot evaluation, very simple and quick, and or a more detailed one after the workshop, to assess if the cropping system that have been built is coherent with the goals which have been defined at the beginning of the workshop. Now I will give you an example from a regional project that we led in our region, in which we accompany 3 groups of farmers, 2 in arable crop and 1 with vineyard, to build new cropping systems to improve soil fertility. These 3 groups follow a training session on soil fertility, and then realize a set of analyze and share the results. The set of analyze was constituted by spider test, microbiome biomass, abundance and diversity of nematodes, and of phytopathogenic fungi. And after this and the results of this set of analysis, they discussed about links between indicators and practices. This led to the co-innovation workshop that we organized to build a new cropping system that answer to the soil quality question that have been identified with the analysis. So we obtain global indicators of fertility. I won't go in detail in the results, but that was our diagnosis of the situation. Here is the example of one farmer from a group who accepted to play the game with his own results and system, so that the group can build a new cropping system to answer to these questions. So to his questions, it was this current rotation, and the main goals that have been defined are to maintain or improve the biological soil quality. His indicators was quite high, so it was mainly maintain biological soil quality. Also to conserve a simple system with no workload increase. It was very important for him. We also had the question of the end of glyphosate use in very superficial tillage situation. After collective and individual reflections on first the list of possible crops, a combination of crops and practices, and why they can combine these crops and these practices to answer to the goals that we defined. They built a new cropping system, which is described here. I won't go in details in this preparation, but the main point in this rotation is the introduction of alfalfa for gramineal control and to increase forage production. They also detailed the tillage or no tillage regarding the different crops, and they also introducing the double cover crop, first summer cover crop and then winter one, to improve the soil cover during all the winter. And after this workshop, we realized an assessment, simple assessment to assess the economic and the economic feasibility of this rotation, which is now in test in its main part in test on one field of East Farm. After this example, I will present you some results from one long-term experiment that we led in a European project, Diver MPACTS, within a network of 10 field experiments, and where we have also used this co-innovation workshop methodology to build the system that we are testing. This project dealing with crop rotation, with rotation, intercropping and multiple cropping. So in year 2017, we designed the cropping system and the experimental design of our field experiment to deal with the current issues of crop rotation with multi-hectare groups, with advisors, cooperatives, researchers, during a one-day workshop. And then we finalized the work on the decision rules. And then we had at the same a simple assessment before implementing the experimentation. Here is what we have built. The reference system is a short rotation with rapeseed, wheat, winter wheat, silage maize, and wheat, which is a frequent rotation in a large farm with dairy production and marketable crops in our region. And the goals that we assign to the innovative system is the reduction of pesticides used, at least of 50%, with a semi-net margin and workforce similar to the reference. And we pay specific attention to the forage and protein autonomy of our new rotation. The rotation that we are testing is a 10-year rotation with several crops, a very diversified one, with the introduction of intercrop of barley and spring pea, with introduction of hemp and introduction of alfalfa. In this field experiment, our main issue is to improve the weed control with such reduction of pesticides used. So we are combining different strategies at the rotation level, but not only at this level. At the rotation level, it's the introduction of a perennial crop, the different sowing period of the different crops, with autumn sowing, winter sowing, and spring sowing, and the maximization of the cover with a semi-permanent cover of clover and multiple cropping between 2 spring crops, and also the succession of 2 spring crops. That the different strategies in the rotation. But as you can see in this scheme, it's not only strategies at the rotation level that which are important to limit the weed pressure. We have also different strategies with action on seed stocks with some time plots and in some before some winter crops direct sowing. We have also introduction of multiple cropping and of hemp for their competitivity for weeds, and also physical control with hoeing. And we are regularly adapting these strategies to the climatic condition, but also to the success or failures of the strategies that we are testing. And for example, this year we are testing to oversow a mix of oat and clover in our alfalfa to try to control weeds in our alfalfa. So it's a very adaptive rotation. To finish, I will just present you an example of a strategy that we have implemented in the experiment, which is the multiple cropping, the introduction of a mix of oat and veggies before our spring crops, silage, maize, or hemp. That is harvest in silage just before the spring crop, and silage maize, for example, is sown in direct in the mix residues. This technique is interesting for us to avoid a drought in summer and to have a complementary forage production, which is protein rich. It's also reduce leaching during winter, and we have some residue to incorporate in the crop. And it's also very benefit for the weed control due to the competitivity of oats mainly, and which is very dense. And we also have a complementary production for of forage in this rotation, in this with this multiple cropping of at least 4 tons dry matter per hectare. And the last example is the introduction of hemp for its quick development and high control of weeds due to the high density and covering with no pesticide used. And after the hemp, we can also sow wheat indirect. So it's very interesting in our condition, but the limit that we have is to the availability of a local value chain for hemp valorization. That's a point, an important point with the to take into account with the crop diversification. It's a valorization of the crop production. And we also observe for the hemp an important mechanization cost with the harvest in several steps, mowing, research, and harvest. So now it's time for me to conclude and to thank you. If you have any question.
Thank you. There has been no questions in the chat. I was wondering, you indicated the Steffi calculator?
Yes, It's a French calculator, which is quite simple to assess very quickly at the cropping system level with a few indicators such as TFI, cost, mechanization cost, margin, and I think we have 5 or 7 indicators with a lot of simple database behind the calculator. So it could be used at the end of a co-innovation workshop in 30 minutes, 1 hour to give first results of what we have built before.
Okay, interesting. I see another question in the chat. Is there a plot or experience with using a cover crop together with the sowing winter wheat and spray the cover crop in the later stadium? Maybe Farina, you want to clarify your question?
Yes, it's my daughter's account for school.
Okay. Oh, so what's your real name then?
Yeah, Pieter Maris. I'm a farmer in the Fabulous Farmers in the Netherlands.
Okay, welcome. Sorry, continue.
So sometimes we can do early sowing of winter wheat, but we wait a little bit because it's when you sow early your winter wheat, you got a chance of more weeds. So sometimes I have a plot available to sow very early, like in August or early September. Is there experience with sowing then a kind of cover crop in it and spray it later in November with herbicide or something? So you have 2 crops growing. That's better for the soil.
Yes, that's an interesting practices that we are testing this year in another project. So I think it will be interesting to test it for the with the opportunity and for covering and for soil, the benefits that we can have, but we have also to take into account the risks on pests and disease for the wheat, because it's as we said just before, it's a balance between the different objectives that we would like to reach.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Maybe as there's not so many questions for now, I suggest that we continue with the presentation of Katrien, and then we have some more time to really go into depth into the different topics, because if Michelle has also a question, then we can see to get maybe some more exchange on the different methods. Maybe also if there's in other countries, if they also use such a similar system, I would be interested to hear. But that's for after the story of Katrien.
Okay, I will share my screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So hello, I'm Katrien Geudens. I'm from Hooibeekhoeve in Flanders, and we have a trial on crop rotation. In this presentation, I will present 2 trials on this. One from ourselves, from Hooibeekhoeve, and one from University of Ghent. The trial from Hooibeekhoeve, to situate, we are living on sandy soils there, and Hooibeekhoeve is a research farm on dairy farming. So our main goal for the rotation is to create fodder for the cows. And this is what our trial looks like. So we have 5 different rotation systems. We started in 2016, and 2017 and 2020 were 2, we call it reference years. So in this years, all plots are covered with maize, and the first crop, the first plot is a monoculture maize. That's the reference that we are relating to with all the other rotations. And when you look at it on the field, it's placed like this. So you see here the 5 different rotations, and they are there is a all rotations are laid there in double. And since 2019, we divided the plots like this. And then on the one side, we used compost, and on the other side, we didn't use compost. For the rotations with grass clover, there was in 2019 on 2 rotations was grass clover, and there we started with this compost and no compost in 2020. And then on top of it, since last year, we divided the plots also in the other direction, and we used more and less manure. That's due to new legislation in Flanders on this manure, and in certain areas in Flanders, you can use only restricted limits, even more restricted limits of manure, and that's why we chose to take this into account in this rotation trial. And when we take a look at the results, like I said before, 2017 and 2020 were the reference years. So these are the years that also come back in these results. And here you see the results on yield. So in 2017, we were very happy to see that even after 1 year of rotation, we saw a lot higher yield on all the plots within rotation compared to the plot with the monoculture of maize. In 2020, we also saw a higher yield on some plots, but not on all plots. We also had the difficulties in 2020 with the formation of the copse in the maize, and that might be the explanation of this negative result in rotation 3, but that has to be explored more. Then on the part of the compost used in this trial, so here you see the results. It's always compared to the same rotation with no use of extra compost, and here you see the yield compared to that with the use of compost. So for all the rotations except for rotation 5, we saw in 2020 a higher yield in the plots with the use of compost. And then when we take a look at the nitrate residue in these plots, we saw in always a lower nitrate residue without the use of compost, but when you take a look at the differences, we see much more difference between the different rotations than compared to the use or no use of compost. Another view on the nitrate residue here for all the years in the trial till now, and then you see that there is much more variation in between the years on this nitrate residue than when you compare to the differences within 1 year due to the different rotations. Maybe an interesting one to have a look at is the red one, because this gives very low results in 2018 and 2019. Rotation 2 is the rotation with 2 years of grass clover in between the maize. And as you know, this gives after the destruction of the grass clover, and then the first year after, this was 2020, we placed maize afterwards, then we had this very high nitrate residue. Yeah, it's maybe not that interesting taken into account this nitrate to have maize after grass clover, but better take a crop with better take up of this nitrate. Then a last look on this trial of Hooibeekhoeve is on the weeds. Here you see for results for 2017 are the lighter colors, and then for 2020 are the darker colors, and then the blue ones are dicotyls and the green ones are for the grasses. And you see for the first rotation, so the monoculture of maize, we had a lot more weeds compared to any other rotation system. And that's an important thing that we that we were able to see in this trial, because in the weed control without the use of plant protection products, it can rotation can be an important way to have to cover this weed problem. And what you don't see in this figure, but what we did see at the field, we didn't only count dicotyls and grasses, but we went into a species level, and then we saw that there was a lot more diversity in species in the rotation 2 till 5 compared to the rotation 1 compared to the monoculture. Then I said before that I was going to speak about another trial. This is not a trial of Hooibeekhoeve, but trial of University of Ghent, and it is set up in 2006. So it lasts already 10 years longer than the trial of Hooibeekhoeve. And there they also take into account 4 levels of manure that they use. And this picture that you see here, it's already an older picture from 2011, but it's a very nice one because you see here the different levels of nitrogen that was placed on the field. And as expected, the crops with no manure, they don't look that happy on this field. The yield is not that big there. If you compare this is a look on the monoculture of maize, but when you compare it to maize after 2 years of grass clover, then you have the same look as 0 amount of nitrogen until 200 kilo of nitrogen, and there you see that the difference between these plots is not that big. You can't see this difference compared to the image we saw before. And this is only due to the use of this grass clover. When we have a look at the yields, it's divided into the same amounts of nitrogen used on the field. And how can you interpret this graph? For example, here this point of 2007, then it says -20, and -20, it means that the yield of the field with monoculture of maize has 20% less yield compared to the field where the year before there was grass clover. It can be it's both an average of both grass clover maize and 2 years of grass clover and then maize. So when there was grass clover in this rotation. And then you see that certainly when you don't use a nitrogen fertilizer, that the difference is very big, and it becomes less when you use more and more nitrogen fertilizer. So this use of rotation can, and certainly rotation with grass clover, can give good results to yields. And certainly when you are not allowed to use nitrogen or only limited. When we take a look at the same graphs, but then in a wider rotation, then you see similar effect, but the effect is less expressive compared to the effect with grass clover in the rotation. And then one last graph on this trial is a graph on the average yield of these plots, monoculture of maize compared to maize in a rotation. And then you see that the difference between good years and bad years, example here 2017 was a good year in Flanders, and compared to 2018 was not a good year. And you see that the difference in yield is way much more expressive in monoculture compared to maize in a rotation, so it gets more stable. Then this graph I wanted to show you is on the evaluation of soil carbon content. Gilles already told you about the importance of this carbon content in the soil. And when we have a look at the blue graph, it all starts at the same level of carbon in the soil. And when we take a look at the blue graph, it's the monoculture of maize combined with a grass as cover crop, where we take one cut of the grass. And then you see that you can raise the carbon content, but not that much in 30 years. The other extreme is the yellow one. It is a only grass clover placed on the fields. And then you see that you can build up the carbon content with this grass clover in the in the rotation. Here it is no rotation, it's only grass clover. And then the green and the brown graphs are in between, so it's maize combined with grass clover. And it can be 3 years of maize, 2 years of grass clover is the green one, and then the brown one is the other way around. And yeah, then you see that the more grass clover you use in the rotation, the higher uptake of carbon of the soil can be gained there. And when you take a look at this graph, it's about the same. It's also a rotation with grass clover in it, and the carbon buildup in the soil. But what's important for the farmer is and what does it mean for me? How much can I gain from this? And that's why we calculated it to the benefits for the farmers in euros per hectare. And then you see that, here you have two two soil types, the sandy loam and the sand, and the rotation is a wider rotation but with cross clover in it and also with winter wheat in it, and then this uptake of carbon by the soil can be related to an extra income for the farmer on field level. These two trials, both the one from University of Ghent and from Hooibeekhoeve, are now picked up in a project from University of Ghent, Hooibeekhoeve, and the soil